All right. I'd like to call this meeting of the NKC Planning Commission to order. First item of business is to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
All in favor, say aye.
I'll second that.
Oh, sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item of business is the approval of minutes of the meeting from May 4th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. I'd now like to ask that anyone who has public comments not related to the items that'll have public comment hearings later in the meeting to please come to the microphone. I see none. All right, our next item is PC 2023-06-01, a zoning text amendment for short-term rentals. Are there, staff, do you have a report?
Yes. Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. So this item has been continued from our last Planning Commission meeting, and this is a hot topic that has been discussed quite a few times now. It is regarding to the short-term rental for residential dwelling units. Upon today, staff has made a significant change from the very first version. So the proposed language has been posted on our website, open for comments, and as of date of today, staff has not received any written comments regarding to this text amendment since the last hearing. Staff recommends that you approve as it was proposed in the red line version and stated in the staff memo. If you have any question and wish to discuss any of the details, I'm open for questions. There are a total of 24 listed items, and some of them have subcategories. The major amendment is related to the specific use standards under B, lodging short-term rental. This is a new section. The whole section is being added toward this particular zoning ordinance. And then there is an amendment to the definition, mostly just trying to add 3 definitions that's being mentioned in this text amendment. One is what's the definition of owner. Another is definition of owner occupied and non-owner occupied. And then beyond all of that is the amendment to describe the particular use, what is lodging short-term rental. So all of these can be found on the website and the staff memo and the attachments of the red line versions as well as the presentation itself. With that said, I'm open to any questions or discussion.
Are there any questions for staff? Go ahead.
All right. I was trying to furiously circle on this one. I read the one that we got in our email. Okay, a couple specific things. So number 6, interconnected smoke and carbon monoxide detectors shall be installed and maintained. That, I believe, is a code requirement for new construction, but it would be a pretty intrusive update to have to do that to like an older home. I don't think that's required per the code for any given rental inspection. Is there a reason that got added in?
Okay, so there is a reason for that being added in. And this is a discussion after being discussed and being alternated between community development, our building code official, and our fire marshals to try to understand what we want to enforce, how do we want to enforce it. And you're correct that a lot of our current rental, they're long-term rental, so the fundamental difference between a short-term rental and a long-term rental is this a lodging facility or is this a residential use? And when we are looking at short-term rental, that's why we call that a lodging short-term rental. A lot of the uses that you keep in mind is it's more of a blend to like a hotel, motel, they're commercial, particular type of the nature itself. So when we do require interconnected smoke and the carbon monoxide detectors, we had that in our mind because we do enforce that for our hotel, motel, and all the other lodging facilities. So down the road, when we do have this question coming up from, say, non-conforming structures and the owner wants to convert their residential dwelling unit to a short-term, to host a short-term rental lodging, shall they be required to upgrade their system to install these? The answer is yes. They will need to put investment in that to upgrade their facility. And the reason for that is because this is more of a commercial type of use. You are hosting particular tenants and guests that are not familiar with this particular structure and who's not been here for long enough to understand the egress and the regarding to a fire and any of those man-made or natural disasters. So that's why we have this particular item in here as requested by the building code official.
Okay. I struggle a little bit because, I mean, it is still the same, like it's a house, right? It's the same building that would be leased long-term. With a hotel, they know that from the outset, right? When they start building the hotel, they know that they have to have interconnected smoke detectors. Especially for a multi-floor building, it's going to be, I mean, you're having to tear out ceiling drywall, you're having to cut cavities through walls. I mean, it's a very expensive thing to run new circuits through and attach to every single smoke detector where they're required. When in a long-term rental scenario or even in a standard residential situation, they could all be independently run as long as it's not new construction. So they're still going to detect the smoke. They're just not going to set one off downstairs and register all the upstairs ones. I think that's a lot to expect of someone looking to do a short-term rental, but I'd be open to other people's thoughts on that one.
Maybe that will add a little bit more of what this town has right now. So I know we have enforcing, and we're trying to enforce and add more strength to our enforcement to multifamily rental units for this particular item. That saying that we do have apartments that currently that do not comply with this particular building code requirement, and we're asking them to upgrade their system during the inspection when they have tenant moving in and out.
So this
during
would
that
be-
particular regular
Would number
inspection.
6 apply to only multi-tenants, structures that are being used as short-term, or all, like houses included?
Will include houses included, the way it's drafted and intend to be at this point.
Okay. I'd happy to hear anybody else's thoughts on that if they have them.
Well, I think one of the goals of this was to highlight the fact that these short-term rentals are essentially businesses operating in residential places. They're hotels for people. And if we have hotels that have the requirement of having interconnected smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, then these are essentially, for all intents and purposes, also hotels, and I believe they should fall under that same category.
I agree.
I mean, I read through it earlier, and I saw that. I don't know that it's particularly intrusive, or I thought it was a good idea, actually. If you want to do business, I mean, that's the cost of business, and you can pass it on to your consumer. So I didn't find anything wrong with it, but if you have any other comments on it, I'm willing to listen to them, certainly.
Yeah, to follow up, so the whole idea with the hotels, and like that's a fair point, but the hotels know as they're being built that that's a requirement. This is something you'd have to go in and retrofit, which, the reason I take particular exceptions, like I've gone through some of this process with properties I've owned in the past, and it is a very onerous thing. Now, in a multi-tenant situation, if you're using a fourplex for Airbnbs, it makes more sense to have those interconnected. So if somebody sets a fire in one of the lower units, the one on the top corner will also ding, and to get out of there. That's, to me, is more the safety issue. If there's a fire set in a 2-bed, 1-bath bungalow, it's going to be pretty apparent when the first one goes off. So I take exception to it, but if the larger group wants it in there, we can leave it alone.
I mean, I'll just say, to the point of like knowing you're building a hotel, you also know you're converting your unit into a short-term rental as well, and should be able to get on it and find the rules related to that before you start that process or invest and get into that sort of business. If you can't handle the requirements, you shouldn't be in the business.
Okay. Would this be something that's enforced on even the existing ones? So they've already gone through the process of standing them up as short-term, but they would need to do this for the permit when the inspection takes place?
Well, I keep saying this, currently there is
Right,
no
there's no
short-term,
rule.
short-term
right.
rental permitted.
Okay. All right, so actually that segues into, section 2, item B. Non-owner, this talks about kind of the carve-out that we made for the non-owner occupied dwelling unit that's been used as a short-term rental prior to the passage of this ordinance. Applicant provide documentary evidence. So basically, you can continue to operate ones that have been operating in R1 and R1A and B. I believe the discussion at that time was properties that are currently registered as rentals, not necessarily ones that have been operating as short-term.
We got rid of that requirement at this point.
Got rid of, what's that?
The required to be registered as a long-term rental, to be qualified, to be considered. We're just saying if you are running as a short-term rental prior to the pass of this ordinance and you provide your evidence of doing so for R1A and R1B non-owner occupied, then we will grant you the continuance of use. of
Okay,
such.
because the discussion at the last meeting was that if they're registered, so that was a change at the staff
It's
level?
a change, because we ran into a practical difficulty. We had people call us saying they want to register as long-term rental, and after a few conversations and stepped into the detail, we realized they're not really running as long-term rental, because long-term rental has its own regular rental regulations. So they're really trying to do short-term rental, so we don't want to create this unnecessary burden and a rush for people to convert all their existing houses registered for long-term rental just because they want to run short-term rental at this point.
Okay. All right, section 12G. This gets into the piece about having somebody who resides within X miles of the city. We talked about having the owner live within 50 miles. This one mentions a local agent within 30 miles.
That's correct. This is a discussion between our fire marshal and us, as regarding to your response. We did map out the KC metro area. 30 miles is generally is how far the radius of KC metro covers. So we do believe this is a more of a reasonable request for 30 miles, so they can respond typically within 1 hour of the travel distance. And that's why we changed from 50 mile to 30 mile. And this is a little different from our long-term rental. Our long-term rental, the requirement is 50 miles. So that's why we proposed 50 mile at first, to just kind of align it up. But as short-term rental, we discussed that they're more of a lodging facility, and we want them to respond quicker. And so 30 mile is where, among the inter-department discussion that we landed at.
Okay.
And also, we changed it from, the owner to local agent who's responsible for it, to accommodate the situation where it's non-owner occupied that can covers a broader group of people.
So that is actually where I was focusing. I don't mind the move from 50 to 30, but I think the idea that we put out before was that we actually want the owner living nearby. Like, that was kind of a way to curb the number. So I would, like, having the local agent, that still allows out-of-town companies to buy up houses and then have a local rep on the ground. I feel like the intent was, unless I was missing that the owner, the actual owner, live within 30 miles.
We can do that.
I agree.
Okay, we can make this
short.
modification. We'll say the property owner.
Yeah, there's me being more strict than what was actually in here, so surprise. Okay, the last piece I'll say, and I just want to throw this out for discussion among the group, there has been a lawsuit filed against the city of Kansas City over their new rules, which these very, very closely mirror. And I'm curious about this body, and then, of course, the city council eventually's appetite for pushing ahead with these rules, given that there's pending litigation against Kansas City, Missouri. I don't know if that's something we want to consider.
We will run this through our city council before that goes to our city councilor, before we go to city council for a final vote on these. At this point, as far as I know, we don't have that concern yet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I would Yes, and I think I've seen that other cities have also gone through similar litigation in the past, and it's just, anytime you're regulating something that seems, although renting a property is not new, the platform is more the newer piece. You're going to get lawsuits as a result of trying to regulate.
Right.
I think you move forward with it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would also point out that the injunction against the city of Kansas City was thrown out today. So the city, the judge mentioned that, the property owner's concerns does not outweigh the city's duty to do business and regulate externalities in the community. And so I think the city of North Kansas City is completely justified in the list of regulations that are presented here. I don't see anything overly onerous that would be anything different than what we're already regulating property ownership through. So personally, I don't see a huge cause for concern there.
Are there any other questions for staff? All right, I'd just like to say that I think that this ordinance passes, or balances really well the people who have started short-term rentals, even though we don't currently allow them, who have invested in property here, and I think that we are, by allowing them to continue to run their businesses, but by preventing new unowner-occupied mini hotels to operate in our residential areas, I think that that kind of meets the needs of both the investment community and our local citizenry. So I really hope that when we pass this, that City Council does really take what we have done here seriously and looks at the work that we have done and passes this, because I think it is a good move for our community.
One other small correction. The memorandum on the beginning page says June 15th. On the fourth page, the third hearing date's June 14th. So we may want to correct the hearing date just in case it's ever reviewed.
Unreal. Okay, no, thank you. Then with that, I will make a motion to recommend approval of the minutes with revisions, revising whatever this is. I'm not going to start from there. 12G, thank you. I'm already on G, so I wasn't sure. 12G to only include the owner.
Is there a
Hang
second?
on. There we go.
Sorry. Can I state the modified version so we can write this into minutes? That will help Megan.
I will make a motion to whatever she's writing down here. Yeah, please.
Okay, so we are modifying 12G as following: the full name, address, telephone number, and email address of the owner to handle the affairs of the property. The owner shall reside within 30 miles of the city limits and shall be reside within 30 miles of the city limits. And that's it.
Then I will affirm my previous motion with that language there.
Is there a second? All right. Excellent. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the motion carries. Are there any other comments for staff?
Staff has no comments tonight.
All right, I now open the public hearing on PC 2023-06-01. If anyone wishes to speak, please approach the microphone.
Last chance.
I see no public comments. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 No opposed. That motion carries. Is there a motion on PC 2023-06? Is that what we do?
That was the motion already made. I was wondering, yeah, that kind of went out of order there. I jumped ahead on the motion. I can remake the motion again if you need to. I recommend approval of the amendments with revisions as stated by staff.
All right, all in favor. Oh, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Passed it twice.
That has gone through. All right. Are there any comments from staff?
I have no comments. Great job.
Are there any comments from commissioners?
I have one. Kudos to staff. This has been through many different iterations this year, and I think we've reached a place where it is very clear what is expected of property owners. I think it is achieving the goals of the city to manage this new phenomenon, relatively new phenomenon, in a way that is responsible. And I just wanted to express my appreciation for what you all have presented us over the last couple of months.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Right.
I would just reaffirm, yeah, exactly what he said. It's great to see planning commission work together and take our time as well and not rush anything through 1 meetings, but now we're on 3. So that is the way the process sometimes works. So thank you.
Are there any other comments from commissioners? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed.
Come on. Gavel it. There we go. Now we're done. That's your question. Are we having another meeting next month?
I guess it's 3 weeks.
We probably will have one in July for the final plat. It depends on the site visit. I'm gonna go sometime, then we'll find out.